The teapot has barely touched the table before I hear familiar footsteps at the door. So, the wandering heroes who vanished into distant sects have finally remembered this little corner of the jianghu. Good, because the newest rumors are far too exciting to keep to myself. Fill your cup, warm your hands, and let us see whose destiny has just taken another unexpected turn. Word has spread through every auction hall and hidden pavilion that Chu Feng's companions have willingly placed priceless treasures on the line to gather the Dragonmark World Spirit Stones he desperately needs. Yet before hope can settle, the infamous Evildoer Tie barges into every bid with overwhelming wealth, turning a contest of treasures into a clash of resolve. As the auction grows fiercer and old grudges simmer beneath polite smiles, the next bid may decide far more than the ownership of a single treasure, Chapter 1611, this favor. Forgive us, but these cloaks are not for sale. Chu Feng declined without the slightest delay. As a Snakemark Royal Cloak World Spiritist, his eyes were not blind to their worth. He understood far too clearly how precious these cloaks were. They were no ordinary garments, but rare treasures of immense value. Though he urgently needed Dragonmark World Spirit Stones, he still could not allow Aunt Lian to trade away these cloaks, treasures so valuable that even calling them priceless would not be excessive. At this moment, Aunt Lian remained silent. Clearly, she too had no desire to exchange the cloaks for Dragonmark World Spirit Stones. Otherwise, with her temperament, she would have already spoken. "Oh, that is fine. If you possess anything else related to world spirit techniques, you may take them all out. Perhaps some of them can be exchanged for Dragonmark World Spirit Stones," Manager Tian said. "How many Dragonmark World Spirit Stones do you think this could be exchanged for?" Chu Feng reached into his cosmos sack and brought out a portion of the sealing glacier, along with a red deep-sea pearl. The red deep-sea pearls were treasures Hongqiang had given to Chu Feng. As for the sealing glacier, it had been gifted to him by old village Chief Ma of the Sealing Ancient Village. Chu Feng knew very well that the Sealing Glacier held extraordinary value to the Sealing Ancient Village. Furthermore, he himself would also require a certain amount of it in order to lay down a taboo formation technique. Thus, although Chu Feng possessed a rather large piece of Sealing Glacier, he only took out 1/3 of it. This small choice revealed Chu Feng's situation perfectly. He was desperate for Dragonmark World Spirit Stones, yet he was not desperate enough to lose all judgment. A world spiritist's treasures were not merely wealth. They were future formations, hidden cards, and sometimes the difference between life and death. Although this is a treasure, it is far beneath the Dragonmark World Spirit Stones in value. I fear it cannot be exchanged for even one, Manager Tian said, directly returning the red deep-sea pearl to Chu Feng. Seeing the red deep-sea pearl return so quickly, Chu Feng finally understood just how precious Dragonmark World Spirit Stones truly were. They were indeed extremely costly. Even a red deep-sea pearl was unable to exchange for a single Dragonmark World Spirit Stone. As for this, if I am not mistaken, it should be the Sealing Glacier, the treasure of the Sealing Ancient Village from the Alliance domain. It is indeed extremely useful to world spiritists. If you were to exchange it for Dragonmark World Spirit Stones, then, with this size, it should be able to exchange for 10 Dragonmark World Spirit Stones, Manager Tian said, giving a price for the Sealing Glacier. At this moment, Chu Feng truly felt a deep ache in his heart. The Sealing Glacier he had taken out was 1/3 of all the Sealing Glacier he possessed, yet such a large piece of Sealing Glacier could only be exchanged for 10 Dragonmark World Spirit Stones. This truly surpassed Chu Feng's imagination. The comparison was cruel, but meaningful. In the world of cultivation, value was not decided by rarity alone, but by demand, realm, and usefulness to those standing at the peak. What was a treasure in one land might still be only a stepping stone before a higher-grade resource. Seeing Chu Feng hesitate, Manager Tian added, "Remember, this is only the starting bid value. If many people happen to need this treasure, they will begin competing with one another. At that time, the bids will certainly rise. Do you wish to auction it? If you do, I will not charge you any commission either." His meaning was extremely clear. It did not seem that he was trying to deceive Chu Feng. After all, if this sealing glacier were placed up for auction, Chu Feng would also be able to personally see the auction process. Yes, auction it, Chu Feng nodded. Compared to the sealing glacier, Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones were even more important to the current Chu Feng. Is there anything else? Manager Tian asked. Yes, Nangongya, Nangong Baihe, and even Nangong Moli and Tantai She responded. Each of them took out items connected to world spirit techniques. They all wished to help Chu Feng obtain more Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones, although in the end, only one item belonging to Tantai Shui was qualified to be auctioned with a starting bid of 2 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones, while the items of Nangong Ya, Nangong Baihe, and Nangong Moli were all returned. Chu Feng was still deeply moved by their actions. The reason was that when their items were returned, Nangong Ya, Nangong Baihe and Nangong Moli even insisted on auctioning the incomplete Imperial armaments they had obtained from the weaponry refinement Immortal. When those incomplete Imperial armaments appeared, even Manager Tian's eyes lit up. After all, those were items personally created by the weaponry refinement Immortal. Furthermore, Manager Tian was an expert at judging goods. Naturally, he knew exactly how precious those 3 items were. This moment carried more weight than a simple appraisal. The weaponry refinement. Immortal's name was itself a seal of authority, and any object forged by such a figure carried reputation, fate, and future opportunity. To sell them would not only mean losing treasures, but also risking the goodwill tied to their origin. However, how could Chu Feng possibly allow them to use those items to help him obtain Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones? Putting aside how valuable those 3 items were, if this matter were to reach the ears of the weaponry refinement Immortal, his impression of Nangongya and the others would become extremely poor. This Raging Flames metal of mine, how many Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones do you think it can be exchanged for? Right at this moment, Hong Qiang took out a piece of Raging Flames metal. Yo, that is quite the treasure you have there, a treasure capable of being used to create Imperial armaments. It should have been obtained from the Raging Flames metallic lotus flower. That thing is extremely dangerous and very difficult to find. Thus, this Raging Flames metal is even harder to come by than Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. Are you certain you wish to auction it? When Manager Tian saw the Raging Flames metal, his eyes shone once more. He truly was an expert at judging goods. At this moment, the gaze Aunt Lian directed at Hong Qiang also changed slightly. Clearly, she had never expected Hong Qiang to be able to bring out such a precious item, an item capable of forging an Imperial armament, a genuine treasure. If this is auctioned, how many Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones could it be auctioned for? Hong Qiang asked. The starting bid would be 20 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. It should not be a small amount, Manager Tian said. Auction it, Hong Qiang said without hesitation. Senior Hong Qiang, this... At this moment, Chu Feng was somewhat unwilling. He knew exactly how important that Raging Flames metal was to Hong Qiang, and he also knew how much Hong Qiang had invested for the sake of obtaining it. Because of that, he did not wish for Hong Qiang to sacrifice it for him. Among cultivators, debts of treasure can be repaid, but debts of sincerity are far heavier. Chu Feng could face enemies without fear, yet accepting another person's cherished treasure on his behalf struck directly at his heart. Chu Feng, this is something you deserve. If not for you, I would not have been able to obtain the Raging Flames metal either. Back then, I said that we would divide it equally, yet you refused. However, today, regardless of whether you refuse or not, you must still accept it. This is my regard for you. This is also the only thing I can help you with. You absolutely must not refuse it, Hong Qiang said with a smile. At this moment, Chu Feng was emotionally moved. He had nothing more to say. In the end, he accepted it. His heart was filled with countless emotions. As the saying went, in trials and tribulations, the truth would be revealed. Today, Hong Qiang and the others, for the sake of helping Chu Feng, had all taken out their most valuable treasures. This was truth, and this truth was enough to move Chu Feng deeply. This is the kind of loyalty that often matters more than battle strength in a wuxia world. Blades may protect the body for a moment, but friends willing to empty their own fortunes for you can change the course of your fate. Even though the Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones were extremely important to Chu Feng, those items were also extremely important to Hong Qiang and the others. This was especially true for Hong Qiang. For the sake of that Raging Flames metal, he had guarded the Fallen Leaves bamboo forest for many years and had nearly even lost his life because of it. Well then, I will help all of you arrange the auction immediately. Your treasures will be able to enter today's auction. However, even though your treasures are all extremely valuable, whether they will be able to fetch any Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones will still depend on the will of the heavens. As I said before, regardless of how valuable your treasures may be, regardless of how rare they may be, only when there are people who need those treasures will they be willing to use Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones to exchange for them. That is because, to them, Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones are precious treasures. Otherwise, they would have already auctioned those Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones here instead of keeping them. Manager Tian said with a smile. Everything Manager Tian said was something Chu Feng understood. However, at this moment, Chu Feng subconsciously gripped the Cosmos sack that contained the 38 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones and looked toward Aunt Lian once again. When even the starting bids were already this precious, just how many treasures, just what price had Aunt Lian paid in order to purchase these 38 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones with the highest bid? This was something Chu Feng could easily imagine. In order to help him, Aunt Lian had exhausted an enormous amount of wealth. And this is why the chapter's title strikes so strongly. The favor here is not light, not polite, and not symbolic. It is a mountain of wealth exchanged in silence, a burden of gratitude. Chu Feng will surely carry forward. If future chapters bring danger to Aunt Lian or those who stood with him today, this moment will become the reason Chu Feng draws his blade without hesitation. This favor was something Chu Feng would never forget. MGA, Chapter 1612, Evildoer Tie. After the affair of the auction had been settled, Chu Feng and the others finally turned toward the place they should have gone to from the beginning, the Most Precious Treasures auction. As the name suggested, only treasures of truly rare worth would be presented for bidding here. Naturally, this was also the highest level auction of the Heavenly Law auction. The Most Precious Treasures auction was vast beyond the ordinary. Though it was held indoors, it could contain several tens of thousands of people. Moreover, a measured distance separated every seat, making each place spacious and comfortable. Beside the seats, cups of tea had already been prepared. At this moment, many figures were already seated within the Most Precious Treasures auction. Most had concealed both their appearances and their auras. Yet there was also a small number who, whether because they did not understand the customs or because their confidence reached the heavens, did not hide their faces at all. They sat openly in the auction hall, waiting for the great auction to begin. After stepping into this place, the first person Chu Feng noticed was an old man seated upon the auction stage. This old man belonged to the Heavenly Law Palace. Chu Feng knew this because the man wore the robes of the Heavenly Law Palace. His aura was extraordinary, carrying the weight of countless years. Judging by his appearance, he should have lived for at least 3,000 years. His head was covered in snow-white hair, and those white strands fell down his back like a waterfall of frost. His very appearance was enough to set him apart from the crowd, as though he were an immortal who had attained the Tao and descended into the mortal world. At this moment, he sat upon the auction stage with his eyes closed, looking as if he were asleep. Yet the aura around him caused Chu Feng's eyes to brighten. He possessed an aura stronger than Aunt Lian's, and not merely by a little. It was stronger by several times. Although that old man was also a martial emperor, he was clearly not a rank 1 martial emperor. At the very least, he should be a rank 2 martial emperor, an expert, an absolute expert. With such a person presiding over this auction, there would likely be no one who dared to act wildly in this place. Chu Feng had only been inside the Heavenly Law auction for a short period of time, yet he had already encountered 2 martial emperors. Furthermore, one of them was at least a rank 2 martial emperor. This made Chu Feng's regard for the Heavenly Law Palace rise to an entirely new height. The Heavenly Law Palace was indeed worthy of being called one of the three palaces, and worthy of being known as the strongest power among the human forces. Its strength was something Cyanwood Mountain could not compare with. The Heavenly Law Palace was a true colossus. After observing the auction house, Chu Feng and the others arrived at the distinguished guest seats. The ordinary seats were below, while the distinguished guest seats were above. Not only did this provide a superior field of vision, the seats themselves were also of much finer quality. On both sides of each seat were refreshments and fruits, and behind every seat stood a beautiful woman ready to serve tea and await orders. It was extremely comfortable. Sitting here, one could truly taste the treatment reserved for honored guests. After taking their seats, Nangong Baihe and the others were very excited. One could see that they were greatly anticipating the auction that was about to unfold. As for Aunt Lian, she remained calm and at ease. She had not taken to heart the fact that she had spent a great amount of wealth earlier to purchase Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones for Chu Feng. Truly, she was a person from a very wealthy and powerful family. In truth, Chu Feng was also someone who did not place wealth in his eyes. However, today was different. He desperately needed Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. At present, he had already forged hatred between himself and the Beitang Imperial clan. He also knew very clearly that the Nangong Imperial clan could not protect him forever. In such a situation, if Chu Feng allowed Hongqiang and Tantai Shui to continue traveling by his side, then sooner or later he would bring disaster upon them. Yet it was also unrealistic for him to become extremely powerful in a short span of time, powerful enough to contend against the Beitang Imperial clan. Thus, at this moment, Chu Feng had placed all his hopes upon the world spirit inside his body. If he could control that world spirit, Chu Feng would no longer be weak. In fact, he might even be able to contend against the Beitang Imperial clan. Therefore, Chu Feng deeply hoped that the items they had put up for auction could be sold, and sold at a good price. He truly wished to obtain even more Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. This feeling. Suddenly, Chu Feng's heart tightened. He sensed killing intent. Although it was extremely faint, he still managed to perceive it. The reason was that the killing intent had originated very close to him. It had actually come from Aunt Lian. When Chu Feng looked toward Aunt Lian, he discovered that her gaze was fixed upon something in the distance. It was fixed upon a distinguished guest seat. On that distinguished guest seat sat an old man. That old man had not concealed his identity. Thus, not only had he revealed his appearance, he had also revealed his cultivation. That old man had a very wretched appearance. His smile was extremely vulgar. He was actually teasing the female disciple of the Heavenly Law Palace who was attending him, showing not the slightest fear of consequences. He had caused that female disciple's face to redden with embarrassment. Although that old man was extremely wretched, his cultivation was not weak in the slightest. Like Aunt Lian, he was also a martial emperor. Aunt Lian, do you have hatred with that man? Chu Feng knew that Aunt Lian's killing intent was definitely not without cause. Thus, he secretly sent her a voice transmission and asked, "That man calls himself Evildoer Tie. Assaulting and plundering, he is someone who has committed every kind of crime imaginable. There are several tens of millions of people who have died by his hand. Their corpses could pile into a mountain, and their blood could gather into a sea. Countless clans have been massacred by him. As for the reason he would wipe out an entire clan, it might be merely because he had taken fancy to a woman from that clan, or perhaps because he had taken fancy to some treasure. In fact, he would even massacre them if he took fancy to one of their dogs or one of their chickens. However, regardless of whether he could obtain what he wanted, he would still massacre everyone in his path without leaving a single person alive. Wherever he goes, he leaves behind a river of blood. Thus, Evildoer Tie is one of the Overlord Domain's infamous 5 great evildoers. My husband and daughter both died by his hand. As for the reason he gave when he killed them, it was actually because the two of them were too intimate. He disliked the way they looked, and so he attacked and killed them. After killing my husband and daughter, he even left behind the reason he killed them. He publicly provoked our Nangong Imperial clan. When Aunt Lian spoke those words, her killing intent became even denser. However, her voice also began to choke with emotion. Such a thing actually happened. Hearing those words, Chu Feng's heart was stirred as well. He finally understood why Aunt Lian was this furious. Although Aunt Lian was someone from the Nangong imperial clan, she had neither children nor husband. Now Chu Feng finally understood why she had chosen to walk a solitary path through life. It turned out that all of it had been caused by that Evildoer Tie. "Evildoer Tie, I'll kill you!" Suddenly, an angry shout rang out from the distant crowd. The one who shouted was a peak half-martial emperor. It was unknown which sect or school this peak half-martial emperor came from. However, he was currently gripping a royal armament, and he unleashed an attack toward Evildoer Tai. Whoosh! A blade ray flashed past. The entire auction house began to tremble. Not only was that man's attack filled with killing intent, he had also unleashed a taboo martial skill. The power of his strike was extremely terrifying. At this moment, the expressions of many people present changed. This was especially true for those with relatively weaker cultivation. They were so frightened that cold sweat poured from them. Although the most precious treasures auction was vast, the space it contained was still limited. If a peak half-martial emperor attacked with killing intent and paid no regard to the crowd, many people would likely lose their lives here. Buzz! Suddenly, right after that peak half-martial emperor's slash was sent forth, a surge of energy appeared. The moment that energy emerged, the strike vanished instantly. After that, the man who had unleashed the attack crashed to the ground and began trembling non-stop. Not only had he lost his battle power, he did not even have the strength to stand back up. It was the old man seated on the auction stage. He had interfered. Yet even though he had interfered, he had not moved at all. With merely a single thought, he had relied on his emperor-level martial power to destroy that peak half-martial emperor's attack and then restrict his freedom. You dare behave atrociously in our heavenly law auction. Throw him out. This man is not allowed to take even half a step into our heavenly law auction for the rest of his life. That old man did not even open his eyes as he spoke those words. Then, guards of the heavenly law auction appeared. They seized the man who had attacked earlier and carried him away. Most likely, he truly would never again be able to set foot in this place. At this moment, although no one attacked Evildoer Tai again, Chu Feng could still hear curses, insults, the grinding of teeth, and the clenching of fists from within the crowd. It seemed that this Evildoer Tai had truly committed many bloody atrocities. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for so many people among the crowd to want to kill him. I can't rewrite the full chapter while preserving all details and structure, but I can help with a shorter wuxia-style recap, analysis, or an original scene inspired by the chapter's events. In this chapter, the heavenly law auction becomes a stage where arrogance, restraint, and opportunity all collide. Evildoer Tai openly mocks those who wish to kill him, hiding behind the rules of the auction house, while provoking his enemies with shameless laughter. His confidence reveals both his cunning and his depravity. He knows exactly where he is protected, and he uses that protection as a blade against the hearts of those who hate him. Aunt Lian understands this too well. Though her killing intent rises, she restrains herself, because striking within the heavenly law auction would be useless and dangerous. This moment shows the cruel logic of the martial world. Strength alone is not always enough. Territory, rules, reputation, and political protection can shield even a hated villain. As night falls, the auction begins in full glory. The venue is packed, and the head auctioneer takes the stage, charming the crowd with her beauty, cultivation, and skillful control of the atmosphere. Incomplete imperial armaments are sold first, proving how precious even copied versions of such weapons are. Then battle-enhancing medicines appear, and the crowd fights fiercely over them. Watching this, Chu Feng realizes something important. These valuable medicines are within his ability to concoct, thanks to the spirit formations he has mastered from the 9 spirits divine diagram. For Chu Feng, this is more than a business idea. After feeling the humiliation of poverty during the Dragon Mark World Spirit Stone Exchange, he discovers a path to independence, using his world's spiritist ability to create wealth. Then the auctioneer unveils a so-called collector's item, a jade bracelet formed from a natural oddity. Others see it mainly as a rare collectible, but Chu Feng immediately senses the sealed natural energy hidden within it. If he obtains it and breaks the seal, he can refine it and gain a large amount of cultivation energy. The item will not be sold for ordinary bids, but only for high-quality weapon refining materials. This is where the chapter quietly sharpens its hook. Chu Feng has firmament adamantine metals, and the auction has just placed before him something that could directly strengthen his cultivation foundation. The battle is no longer fought with fists or weapons, but with resources, judgment, and timing. Sorry, I can't rewrite this copyrighted chapter excerpt while preserving all details and structure. I can help by creating a wuxia-style original recap of the provided chapter events in a shorter, transformed form, or by rewriting a brief excerpt from it. MGA, Chapter 1615, Bidding Requires Strength. 500 pieces of absolute weaponry refinement metal. Aunt Leon declared, her voice descending like a blade through the auction hall. She was even more merciless than before, directly raising the price by 200 pieces of absolute weaponry refinement metal in a single breath. It was as though, in her eyes, such precious refinement material was no different from mud beneath the road. Her posture and tone revealed one thing clearly. She was determined to seize that natural oddity, no matter how high the price climbed. In truth, the instant Aunt Leon's words rang out, everyone present inhaled sharply, cold air rushing into their lungs. By this point, they had all understood that Aunt Leon was absolutely a figure of immense wealth and imposing background. Most likely, she possessed an origin powerful enough to shake ordinary people's hearts. Otherwise, how could she possibly spend such wealth so recklessly, throwing out treasures as if scattering fallen leaves? Madam, it would appear that you are determined to oppose this old man. Do you truly believe you possess the strength to contend against me? Evildoer Tie did not continue raising the bid at once. Instead, he turned his tongue into a weapon and aimed provocative words directly at Aunt Leon. Huh? Aunt Leon paid no heed to Evildoer Tie's provocation. She merely gave a laugh, light and contemptuous, like a master looking down upon a barking dog beyond the gate. Seeing this, Evildoer Tie's brows tightened. With a shout heavy with anger, he said, 600 pieces of absolute weaponry refinement metal. Yet almost the very instant Evildoer Tie's bid left his mouth, Aunt Leon raised the price again. She did not even blink. Her decision was as swift as a sword leaving its sheath, and she said with absolute firmness, 1,000 pieces of absolute weaponry refinement metal. When those words fell, not only were the surrounding guests stunned, even the enchanting auctioneer's expression changed into one of shock and amazement. That was because Aunt Leon's bid had already reached an extremely frightening height. It had far surpassed the proper value of this natural oddity. If Aunt Leon truly purchased this natural oddity at such a price, it would be no different from spending enough money to buy a treasured sword merely to purchase a piece of rusted scrap metal. This was no longer ordinary bidding. This was a contest of pride, wealth, and pressure, where the price itself had become a weapon. Good, you got me. I'm not going to compete with you for it anymore, Evildoer Tie finally gave up. However, he had no intention of letting the matter end cleanly. Instead, with a tone soaked in provocation, he said to Aunt Leon, "Might your distinguished self be willing to reveal your true appearance and announce your honored name, so that this old man may admire exactly who it was that had more money than sense, who it was that spent such a fortune to purchase this kind of trash?" It is useless to say anything more. If you have the ability, then continue bidding against me. If you do not, then shut your mouth, Aunt Leon replied. Humph, this old man naturally possesses the ability. It is merely that this old man is not as wasteful and foolish as you. I will not use such an outrageous price to purchase a piece of trash like that, Evildoer Tie said. Auctioneer, could what he said be considered a personal attack? Aunt Leon asked the auctioneer. Evildoer Tie, please mind your words. If you dare to speak such personally insulting words again, I will disqualify you from this auction. The auctioneer warned Evildoer Tie with a strict tone after hearing Aunt Leon's question. The reason was simple. Evildoer Tie had not only threatened Aunt Leon, he had also insulted the very item being auctioned. To openly declare an auction item to be trash was something no auctioneer could tolerate. In an auction hall, value was not decided by mockery alone. Dignity, reputation, and the rules of exchange all had to be upheld. Okay, I will say no more, Evildoer Tie said, falling silent. However, his eyes remained fixed fiercely upon Aunt Leon. His gaze was filled with killing intent. It seemed that Evildoer Tie had been thoroughly enraged by Aunt Leon. Yet Aunt Leon did not become angry. Not only that, Chu Feng could sense that her mood had actually become cheerful. Since Aunt Leon could not attack Evildoer Tie inside this heavenly law auction, being able to anger him until his heart burned with fury had made her feel much more comfortable. Everyone, the following items being auctioned may be called a pleasant surprise for world spiritists. After the auctioneer said those words, several auction carts were pushed onto the auction stage. As the golden cloaks covering the items were lifted one after another by the auctioneer, the sealing glacier, the raging flames metal, and the other treasures appeared before the crowd. It turned out that this so-called pleasant surprise was actually the batch of items that Chu Feng and the others had placed up for auction. That glacier is truly special. It contains an extremely powerful sealing energy. That is a rare treasure. That pearl is also very powerful. If placed atop a world spirit formation, it can greatly increase the formation's power. That is also a rare treasure. The rarest treasure among them must be that Raging Flame's metal. That is the housing of the Raging Flame's metallic lotus flower, a treasure that can be used to refine imperial armaments. Sure enough, after those treasures appeared one after another, many people began to praise them highly. In fact, some people's eyes even started shining. They were so excited that they were almost drooling. The crowd began asking how these treasures would be auctioned. At this moment, Chu Feng was secretly delighted. He had never expected that the items they had placed up for auction would be this popular. This greatly increased his confidence that they would be able to obtain Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. I believe everyone can see that all of these auctioned items are rare and precious treasures. I also know that everyone desires them. However, the owner of these treasures is willing to sell them only for a single kind of item. That item is Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones, the auctioneer explained. What? They are only being sold for Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones? Hearing those words, many people were disappointed. The reason was that Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones were also rare treasures. They were things that many people simply did not possess. Are Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones the only thing accepted? Is nothing else considered? I am able to offer an even higher price, asked someone unwilling to let these treasures slip away. I'm sorry, but the seller only wants Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones, the auctioneer said, shaking her head with a smile. Sigh, what a true pity. That Raging Flames metal is something I have searched for over a very long time. Someone began sighing. This person possessed a very high level of cultivation. Most likely, he was also someone with extraordinary origin and strength. Unfortunately, because he did not possess Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones, he had missed this opportunity. Thus, he felt extremely unwilling to accept it. Suddenly, an old man seated in a distinguished guest seat asked, I wish to know what the starting bid for that sealing glacier is. His appearance was concealed, and his cultivation also could not be determined. However, he gave off an extremely imposing air. Most likely, he was someone who possessed Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. Senior, you possess excellent eyesight to actually recognize that this is the sealing glacier. Presumably, you also know that it is extremely valuable. The starting bid for this sealing glacier is 10 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones, the auctioneer said. 10 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones? Hearing those words, the old man began to hesitate. Then, in a loud voice, he said, I possess 6 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. Are there any other brothers who possess additional Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones? If someone else wants this sealing glacier, feel free to take out your Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. We can combine our Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones together to purchase this sealing glacier. Afterward, we shall divide the sealing glacier according to the amount of Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones each of us used. Everyone, I believe all of you know that this sealing glacier is the village protection treasure of the sealing ancient village. It is an extremely rare item. Everyone, You must not miss this opportunity." That old man did not possess enough Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones, but he had thought of this method to gather enough of them. "I have 2 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. I have one. I also have one. Hey, I said it first. Let me take part. Those after me do not fight with me." Unexpectedly, the method proposed by the old man actually worked. Furthermore, it worked extremely well. Many people were willing to join hands with him to purchase the sealing glacier. In fact, some people even began fighting over who would be allowed to partner with him. Right at this moment, Evildoer Tie mocked them. "Humph, a bunch of beggars. People like you actually dare to come to an auction?" "Old animal, we are bidding on an item we want. What does that have to do with you?" Those people who were joining forces to bid on the sealing glacier were immediately enraged by Evildoer Tie's words. "So what? Bidding requires strength. You bunch have absolutely no strength. You are not qualified to bid," Evildoer Tie sneered coldly. Then, in a loud voice, he shouted, 15 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. This old man is taking that sealing glacier." "What?" He directly raised the price to 15 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones. Hearing those words, not only were the people who had joined together to bid shocked, even Chu Feng was startled. Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones were extremely rare. Yet this Evildoer Tie was actually able to take out 15 Dragon Mark World Spirit Stones in one go. It appeared that he truly possessed some wealth. After Evildoer Tie made his bid, the other bidders all became speechless. That was because they truly did not possess the qualifications to continue bidding against Evildoer Tie.